Morning, everyone, to our Tuesday public meeting. If you can, stand and follow me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. In addition to our regular agenda today, we have two public meetings scheduled today, one at 9:45 and then a closed public hearing at 10 a.m. So I'm just letting you know I need to honor those times when they come up. Minutes, I would ask Commissioner Mortensen to give us a motion on the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. As usual, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Any discussion on those?
Just a quick question. Have you ever seen the minutes refused?
No,
It's theoretically possible, I'm sure.
it's almost like refusing the vouchers.
Very good.
Seeing no questions, call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dennis is at a meeting down in Vancouver for the next 2 days, so he won't be here today. Go over the consent agenda with you a little bit. We have a couple call for bids. They're both for the period May 2023 to April 2024. And it's public works, it's our surfacing materials and asphalt materials used during the year for road repairs. We have a agreement, contract bid awards, a public assistant grant agreement from FEMA and Washington State Military Department. And this is for repairing storm damage that the January 22 storm event caused on it refers to our leachate pumping, Italian Creek Road, Bates Road, Butte Hill Road, PH 10, and it's a grant they were able to get to help with some of that. What else we got? The project over at Hall of Justice, the sheriff's transaction window has been completed. So we have a completion letter approval to Pacific Tech Construction, acknowledging it's been completed. And we revised commissioner committee assignments when I was put in as chair. I take on some committee assignments that the chair has to do. So my colleagues took some of the load off and we changed out about 4 different committees. Correspondence, I'm going to ask when we approve the consent agenda that we remove letter A. This was a letter we were going to draft to Senator Braun and Representative Orcutt. We were told they were going to ask for money in the budget for the Mount St. Helens Lodge and Education Center, and we drafted a letter of support for those two in their efforts to do that. But Monday, we talked to Senator Braun's office, and they have no record of it. So it's we're kind of a cart before the horse, so we're pulling that out. The FERC, that's just a letter to us. They're acknowledging a letter we sent to them on 2/15/23, giving them details on a plan. Affidavit, David, a posting resume that's posted on our bulletin board. We appointed Curtis Thomsen to the Silverlake Watershed Advisory Committee. we appointed Milton E. Patterson Jr. to the Silverlake Flood Control District, representing district position number 2. And we sent a letter to the Great Rivers Behavioral Health, changing Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners representation from Commissioner Weber to Commissioner Mortensen. Vouchers, we made a decision to, in Washington State, about 43% of our lands are public lands. And the states that have a high density of public lands, Washington, Idaho, Montana, our federal lobbying group is forming a committee to promote those areas, to try and help rural counties that depend on that have a lot of public lands, give them some benefits to getting funds. And to form that group, they were asking a 1% return of funds we had already received. Obviously we received $20,000 in funds, and they were asking for a 1% return to set up this educational group to help these other lands. And we felt that $2,000 was worth the effort to see if we could help out. We have other counties, Okanagan County, I think, had to, if they were paying in 120,000, Yakima was over 30. We felt that 2,000 was reasonable for us to see if we could make a difference for rural counties around our state. And then we have a regular operating vouchers in amount of $4,127,117.47. Questions on any of the agenda items?
I would add that on the voucher, the WASAC for special assessment, that is something that we discussed here, and it's somewhere in the recordings. And it's not exactly clear what's going to happen, but it seemed appropriate that we should join. That's my roundabout way of saying that we aren't encumbering you with anything else except that $2,024.
Yeah.
We have no promises attached with this.
Yeah, it was a one-time deal.
And if it's successful and we understand it more, it may come again and there may be more dues in the future, but that would be up to the board again.
Yeah, that's a good point. No long-term commitment here.
Yeah.
Good morning, procedures. Just a note of protocol. Normally, or I've been used to seeing a dollar value on items on the consent agenda when you're presenting those. For instance, item number 4 at the completion of the Pacific Tech. It's just informative to us if there's just a value put there, as you've done on many of the consent items in the past.
I don't remember the cost of that project. I want to say
It's
I don't really want to get into that.
it's in the low tens of thousands.
Yeah, I want to say right around 15 when they completed that.
It was under 50, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what you're asking is, in addition to all the times that we discussed this before, why not put the final amount here, just for convenience?
Just for good communication. Right?
Yeah, I agree. Clerk?
I
It
see
was
it.
not provided and it should be in the contract, so I could pull it if you'd like.
Right, and so you'll be able to pull it up and throw it on here in future?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I see a hand up. Katrina Harris.
Morning, Commissioners. That dollar amount is $44,591.35 paid with ARPA funds.
Okay,
That was even less than I thought.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay, I would call for a motion to accept the consent agenda minus 6A.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as modified by removing item 6A.
Any further discussion? See no hands? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes. We have one motion item. Looks like Carolyn's on.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. You want to speak to that a bit?
Yes, so before you today is a resolution to adopt precinct boundaries for 2023. You may or may not remember that you went through a big redistricting project after receiving census data in roughly 2021. Well, the legislature extended deadlines for jurisdictions, and we did not receive new information for the Port of Woodland in time to adopt them last year. So this is, in fact, I remember receiving them while I was presenting last year, the newly adopted maps. So what you have before you today is strictly the changes for the Port of Woodland internal district boundaries. So their Port Commissioner Districts 1, 2, and 3, making those changes, I should say implementing those changes from the port changed our precincts fairly drastically. It forced us to create an additional precinct. So we went from 91 to 92 precincts. And each of the following precinct maps that I gave you, Caples, Woodage, and Woodland Heights, they also were altered to incorporate these changes. Did you have any questions for me?
Well, and it's all to keep precincts about the same size, right? About 1,500 votes or so.
Well,
Yeah.
don't open that can of worms.
Yeah.
So this is in response to the port has a responsibility in trying to ensure that their commissioner districts are equal in size. But as an auditor trying to administer these precinct boundaries, we are held to a different standard. And precincts, following statute, they need to be wholly in a single congressional district, wholly in a single legislative district, a single city, county legislative or county commissioner district. And so by holding us to all those standards, it creates a lot of splits and portions. So we would love to see all of our precincts larger at about, 1,200 is a really good, healthy size for a precinct where it protects the anonymity of each individual voter. But with the restraints put on us and the creation of those precincts, really, we're left following district boundaries. So
Okay.
I wouldn't say that they're close to 50. They're all under the statutory limit, but yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So if I could add onto that question, it seems like you're doing precinct changes of some sort relatively frequently, far more frequently than the every 10 years due to the census. So it seems like you do changes maybe on the average every 2 years.
Almost every year, actually, because you have to consider cities are constantly annexing. So anytime a city annexes, we need to change our precinct lines. So, it's the board's responsibility to adopt the precinct boundaries. I've done the work to make them manageable, and I'm presenting them to you. And you'll probably see them most every year. We get lucky when we get to skip a year.
Got it. And while you have some requirements that will change the population count, something like that, you've got some other requirements like mosquito control. They're not precinct aligned, right?
No. No, that's different. I don't believe that their taxing jurisdiction that affects our precincts. I don't believe.
And the reason I
Unless
bring
they
that up,
follow- Unless they follow a different boundary that's already in place.
yeah. The reason I bring that up because when the assessor has to do a job, an individual on one side of the street may be different than an individual on the other side of the street, and that can cause a lot of questions. It's just the function of how the legislature has put things together.
It is, and anybody that lives on the hill on Columbia Heights will probably see that most frequently. You've got one part of the road on Columbia Heights in one school district and another part, another school district. So I used to live on that road, and I remember where I lived, my kids were in Kelso School District, but the Longview bus was at the end of our driveway picking up kids, and the other kids couldn't catch that bus. So yes, you're absolutely right. One side of it, those district boundaries have to stop somewhere.
Any questions? I see no hands raised. I would entertain a motion to approve resolution number 512.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the resolution to update the internal district boundaries as has been eloquently discussed by our auditor.
Seeing no further, call for the vote in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Like I did last week just before we jump into citizen comments, and we'll be able to do that until 9:45. Just remind you again, I have to cut you off at 9:45 for the public hearings. A couple of updates from last week. We had questions and I think we answered them, but they also sent me a copy. We had a question on the warranty on the roofing contract. And they sent me a copy of that, and it is 2 years on the construction and 20 years on a product. So that was a good question to bring up. Also had a question, and it's out of the purview of what the commissioners have anything to do, but there was a person. It bothered them enough that they questioned at our meeting, and that was on hospice. They had heard hospice was selling, and so I made a phone call, and hospice has sold their in-home care to a company out of Vancouver that will take care of Longview and Vancouver. So their in-home care has been sold, and their centers are also up for sale. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but it's just probably more of the economic conditions around the medical arena. You know, they've been a wonderful partner for years and years and years, but that's just an update to answer her question from last week. Did you have anything you wanted to?
Yeah, it's not like they're going to be out of clients. So it's probably some kind of economic machination, and it's probably embroiled with all kinds of other things we talk about here and kind of wring our hands in desperation. Today, this afternoon, like if we needed hospice, is that facility open?
It's open right now, yes.
Okay, so it's going to stay open until a resolution of some kind?
As far as I know.
Okay. Yeah, and I do agree with you. This is one of those things that like,
Yeah,
what's the problem?
Economic realities sometimes bite things, and you're never going to find me saying anything about hospice. We were involved with them and in the life issues with my wife, and I'll never speak poorly about what they do.
And the in-home too is remarkable. And just one thing, at that time, you and I with my dad aren't really the most cogent and understanding of all the vagaries and all that. they do the right thing.
Yeah,
They don't ask lots of questions. Well, you need a signed triplicate, power of attorney here.
no, they just,
They just do the work.
yeah. So. With that, I'll open it up to public comments. Come on up. You just, at this table, and there's usually on that microphone, there'll be a button. You want to see a green light is what you want to see.
Okay, there is a green light.
Okay,
Okay. My name is Michelle Tapp and I'm a 72-year-old retired resident of Longview who has worked my entire adult life. I'm on a fixed income and dependent on Social Security for my rent, food, and all living expenses. Now, with the high inflation and market increases, it's impossible for me to meet my housing cost. Since my income is Social Security, I've tried over and over again to gain help for rent with all local agencies, HUD, CAP, DSHS, with no success. I was ultimately told they cannot assist me because I am not homeless, a convicted felon, mentally ill, or on social services like welfare. The homeless situation has created a funding complex where an array of social service agencies are getting massive amounts of government and grant money to address homelessness. Have we created a complex which doesn't prevent homelessness, but only perpetuates it? What resources are available to assist a senior citizen dependent on Social Security who receives no government handouts? I've found none. The only opportunities are allotted for people who have made poor life choices while already on government social programs, or drug addicts, felons, homelessness, or the mentally ill. If you could point me in the right direction for help with resources for retired citizens on fixed income who pay taxes for 55 years.
I want to say amen. I mean,
Yes.
I could not agree with you more. I don't know. I'm not probably the best person to answer what is available.
It'd be probably Gina,
Gina, that's why I was wondering if,
but in the meantime, yeah, I'm into what you say, and you're in a group of people that I've been talking about and trying to get, those are the people I'm concerned about, because along the way, essentially, it's been implied that Social Security will handle things. And through misuse of Social Security and many other things, you become disadvantaged, and our promise has been broken. And that weighs heavily. Now, recently, about a year ago now, we granted Campus Towers $700,000 or so, and they have a pretty good operation. But for someone like you, I think you would find them 2 years on the waiting list or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's not only that, it's like, you know, I rent a little duplex that I have been there for 10 years. And, you know, I retired and I was able to make ends meet up until everything blew up. And then here I am, and I'm seriously, you know, fearful that I'm going to lose this. You know, I've lived there, and my landlord is more than willing to do anything like to get on like a Section 8, but a Section 8, which would help somebody like me, has not only does it have a waiting list, but it has a waiting list to get on the waiting list. And so you're forced either to become homeless, and then it's, for some reason, all these funds and where they're directed or whatever become available.
Have you been in touch with the mediation center? I don't know if that'll help any.
I don't.
There's a lady in the audience who might be someone you should talk to. Maybe I can point out that there's an issue about anonymity here. We don't really want to embarrass anybody or put a
Right.
target on them when they're
Thank
just
you.
trying to give us information. So, that person that just gave me a nod, they will come and talk to you. In the meantime, did we get Gina on?
We're working on it.
Yeah, okay.
Trying to, we have explored, you hear a lot about dock fees that come back to the counties and the cities. And we've tried to explore ways that we could help people, just what you're talking about, to try and keep them out of the situation, but they're pretty restrictive to only going once you've passed into the situation, which as you've explained today is nonsense, but we continue to work on it. At least I do. And we'll try and get Gene on, maybe answer a couple questions. And I think that was a good suggestion with our friend there. Okay.
Okay, thank you for
Thank
your
you for
time.
coming. Well, thank you for coming. Any others? Ron?
Just as an aside on that, I suspect that not only am I personally more inclined to help someone who's done the right things, everybody's had equal opportunity. If you do the wrong thing, that's sort of on you,
Yeah.
but they've done the right thing. It's sort of on us. And I wonder just how many people are in that category versus the other category, because clearly, as she points out, we spend almost everything on the other category.
Yeah. I don't know the numbers, but I can guarantee she's not alone.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully I'm very thankful that you come and spoke, and hopefully that group speaks more, because I think there needs to be attention paid to it. Right now, the attention is paid to situations where people have made bad choices, and we seem to be rewarding that. I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit, but I would rather help those that have tried to do the right thing their whole life than pour money down another drain. Anyway, sorry, Ron.
That's okay. Thank you. Just a note of information, since section 8 was mentioned, is that of course, is another federal program that was supposed to be a helping hand, but it becomes an entitlement. Once you get on it, you're on it forever. With my 10 years on the housing authority, I kept promoting it. It should be a 5-year or some period of time, that it gives people a helping hand for a period of time, knowing that it's not forever. And I was always told that was illegal, but it's just for all of us in here to know that the people on section 8, many of them are deserving, but once they get there, they're forever until something removes them, but there's no statute of limitations. So it's another piece of our government help, that we can't do this forever. We have to give helping hands for a period of time.
Yeah, that gets complicated when you're past a certain age. There's employment opportunities aren't plentiful, and there are lots of other issues.
I got a text from my landlord, and he asked me to check into the housing thing. He said it would help me and it would help him. So I checked, and as she said, there's no way, that's the waiting list for a waiting list for a waiting list. And so there's no help. And as far as what Ron said, if you are a senior citizen on the fixed income, it should not go away. It should stay as long as you're alive. That's my opinion.
This, I'm going to promote the 1:30 meeting a little bit, because we're going to have a discussion on the RFPs that came in, plus one from a builder that sent in email and had some ideas. And I think it's we'll be going over that a little bit at 1:30. I think it's interesting to talk about, because he actually is talking about affordable rents and how he could possibly do that. It might be an interesting conversation at 1:30. Go ahead.
I also would like to comment on what the woman previously said about people on a fixed income. I likewise am in that same situation, relying solely on my income from Social Security and railroad retirement, which railroad retirement is another government program like Social Security for those who had worked in the railroad industry. But if my house was not fully paid for and I am completely free of debt, there is no way in the world I could afford to pay rent or make a house payment or make an automobile payment. It's right on the edge of being able to pay my bills and my obligations. But on another subject, I wanted to ask if there's somebody from engineering or road engineering here who could. I know the county has nothing to do with Rainier Bridge, but it seems that there's been some issues with safety on the Rainier Bridge, and was wondering if somebody could speak to the overall safety of that bridge. I know of some people who refuse to cross the bridge. So thank you very much. If somebody's on from engineering, that'd appreciate some quick answers.
Well, I can pick on her. I think, I don't know if she's can speak fully to it, but she might give you a little bit of an idea. Yeah, she knew I was going to call, right?
Yes, I did. That's why I'm here, because I know you guys call occasionally. So the Rainier Bridge, as you said, it's a washed up bridge. They are inspecting the bridge right now as they're beginning to start this project, which is where they found the beam that they had to repair last week. It is an older bridge, and I know they're going through and inspecting, and the project that they're working on next are finger joints, which don't ask me to fully explain them because they're just joints and they look like your fingers. They interleave like that. So they're replacing some materials on that, and that will be this summer project. I have not read their bridge reports, and I'm not an expert on that bridge. I do drive it on occasion, but it is not my favorite bridge to drive. I will tell you that, but that's as much as the narrow as the conditions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are conversations we've had with various people about the bridge condition. One constituent who's very familiar with construction is quite concerned over that. His concern is multifaceted, but one of the concerns is most bridge what do you call the stanchion, the towers are, they have a buffer area around them so that if a ship hits, that will absorb the shock before knocking over the bridge. And apparently we've long lost that on this bridge. Make a long story short, we spend inordinate amounts of money trying to blow things up in foreign lands. And we've needed a bridge across the Columbia for a long time. And this is a perfect example of us probably facing, like anytime the bridge shuts down, that's a disaster.
Yeah. We got to realize that thing is almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
And it was state of the art when it was built, but it no longer is. And there's issues. Yes, sir.
Jumping back a couple topics to inflation, cost of living, struggles with rent. It does seem like in the big picture, our problem in our society is the wealthier getting wealthier and the marginal are getting poorer. For a landlord, which I'm one, to be raising rents at a time, through a time when we're getting very wealthy on appreciation of our properties, just compounds that problem of the discrepancy between the wealthy and those who struggle. So as leaders, and I know you're free market capitalists for sure, but until we somehow look at balancing measures for those with wealth and those who have worked just as hard all their lives and are poor. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may?
Absolutely.
The problem is we began making mistakes in this country not long after the Revolutionary War. There are quotes from Thomas Jefferson and Davy Crockett that kind of outline these things. So we're talking in the 1820s or so. If you take a look at the rest of the world that has embraced some kind of package of suppressing prices, controlling manufacturing, controlling the market, it ends up in disaster. And anytime you decide that, well, this is just a temporary measure, a halfway safety measure, it ends up blowing up. I mean, I cannot think of an exception to that example, to exception to the concept. So the trouble we face is, how do we undo something that is really pernicious and manufactured by, I know I'm pointing the fingers, the legislature here and in and in Washington, D.C. That's a lot of, there are a lot of laws that are just counterproductive. I've argued here against rental subsidies. I go to the Homeless Housing Task Force and I sit there and they want more rental subsidies, but on top of that, they want to pass a county ordinance that says you may not increase the rent on your property. Those things sound good, but they're the hell of fascism and communism, all those things that we know have failed. I just came back from a trip to Florida and I bumped into a young lady who just came from Cuba 9 months ago. Well, now it's probably closer to 10 months. And she didn't speak much English, so we chatted and along anyhow. And it was pretty clear to her. I mean, she said almost unambiguously, "What's the matter with you people? You're going towards this communism, and I just fled it from Cuba." And so we have to be very careful how we go about trying to fix a problem. Most of the time, what we do is put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And
I see Gina
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
has joined. Gina, can I? Hi.
Hey, good morning.
Appreciate you coming on. We had a citizen come up and talk about, she's retired, lives off Social Security and stuff, and the inflation and whatnot is starting to, she can't keep up, and you're starting to get behind in rents. And the question was, I'm paraphrasing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but where does a person go? It's like they can't get help until they actually lose their place. Do we have options for people that are trying, and they're just, we're getting caught up in economic realities that are coming down on us?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot out there for those particular situations. I caught kind of the tail end of some of that conversation, and I heard someone mention vouchers and wait lists, and there's a couple of those types of senior focused things in the community, but a lot of them have really really long wait lists that you have to just sign up for, and then you just wait and see if your turn comes up. For both vouchers to support like independent living, and there's a couple senior housing projects like Campus Towers, for example, that only serve seniors. So I know we've had some of these conversations about how do we expand those units that are available that might be more affordable to seniors. We did some of that a little bit with Campus Towers, and we can certainly continue that conversation to see what type of resources that we might be able to tap into to assist with that particular population. I know our community is an aging population. I think we're seeing the 55 and older group is growing a lot more than the other age groups. So we know it will continue to be an issue that we see. So I'm sorry, I didn't come with a magic resource. Unfortunately, I think it is, they're few and far between.
Thank you, Gina. Appreciate
So,
you. Go ahead.
Gina, if you could spend some time thinking about what you would do if you didn't have as many constraints on you, and maybe we can decide to take a chance on some solutions. In other words, we need to go outside the box that the legislature has painted us in, but I think that's a doable thing. We just have to be clever, and that means you, because I'm not clever about those things.
Can do.
Since the problem is the government, is there any way that we could put together a group of, I'll call them kind of well-to-do citizens that could kind of form some kind of an ad hoc group where they could start collecting some kind of funds from each other or from local businesses and start to put together some kind of a fund like that that people can come to, and keep it completely out of the hands of the government?
My name is Scott Olson, and I would just say I'd like the idea of thinking outside the box. You just approved sending $2,000 for this group that's going to see if we can do something more with public lands. I think, again, we need to get government out of public lands and allow it to take the forest industry, for instance. If they were allowed to cut more freely than what they are, and they're replenishing those trees, so it's not like they're clear cutting areas. If they could generate more income off of that, there'd be more tax revenues. And if you get it at the get-go, like this group comes together and says, okay, we're going to start giving to this county X amount of dollars, instead of spending it here and there willy-nilly, you could set up a program like this with a steady income from that. And all we have to do is better push back to government and say, get out of the things you shouldn't be in, which is squeezing down the forest, as an example, to the point where we can't receive on a renewable resource the revenues that are available and the tax dollars that can come to both school districts and to counties and cities and help us out. So I think, again, it's like we don't have to set with the status quo. I think we can think about some things and do things maybe differently than we have before without coming up with another handout. I'm with Larry about government's already caused most of the problem that we have. So just encourage you to push back a little bit with common sense.
We have about a minute, maybe. The fellow in the red hat kind of, I would like to, if you could get some people together, we would probably love a Wednesday meeting where we actually have a conversation like we're going. It is completely within the scope of the United States to have citizens come together and debate their own problems and have us not be in the way. And I think we would be more supportive than in the way.
Yeah. There was a whole lot of people that signed the declaration that thought that way.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just about ready to turn over into our first public hearing. So let's do that, Kathy.
Okay. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Manager for Cowlitz County. The Office of Financial Management recommends that the Board of Commissioners approve the establishment of a new fund for opioid response. Additionally, to approve adjustments and amendments to the 2023 Cowlitz County budget presented in attachment A for this agenda item number 9. I'll be happy to go over the amendments by detail. The general fund will have the following adjustments. Probation services to increase the budget for $21,000 for overtime and extra help payroll that was inadvertently not included in the budget as had been requested. Offender services to increase the budget for $65,000 for overtime and extra help payroll that was inadvertently not included in the budget as has been requested. Both of these items have historically been expenditures for the county. Commissioner's Office to increase office supplies, computer software, photocopies, and other, while decreasing airfare, equipment rent, and interfund professional services to cover the increases in the other expense categories. Sheriff Office to increase the signing bonus category as a result of contract. While to fully offset these, there will be a decrease in holiday budget. Additionally, increase in lease, rental equipment, photocopiers, and boat moorage that will be offset by a decrease in miscellaneous operating and maintenance supplies account. Minor equipment will be increased $23,500, and professional services contract will increase $44,600. Both of these increases will be offset by additional revenue for criminal justice training and miscellaneous revenue, as well as ARPA funds for a grand total of $68,100. Clerk Office will have an increase for additional services related to continued work on microfilming conversion to digital images in the amount of $10,821, which will come from ARPA funds. Non-departmental expense will increase due to approval for the funding for the, and I may say this wrong, Herzenberg infield turf project for $60,000. Overall, a decrease in the general fund of $146,000 will be required to adjust the budget. Continuing, Noxious Weed Control Program requires an adjustment of fund balance reduction of $1,172 to fund the amount needed for the reserve for vehicle funding. Drug Task Force ending fund balance was under budgeted by $28,193, and the revenue fund balance was overstated in the budget and will be correctly reduced by $47,541. Various expenditure categories will also be reduced to balance the adjustments made to fund balance. Opioid response new fund will be budgeted for revenue and expenditure authority of $693,408, which represents the current estimate of the 23 distribution for both settlements from the distributors as well as the pharmacy that were signed settlement agreements. Low income housing represents additional revenue from a Longview contract and additional expenditures, both in the amount of $260,000. Law and Justice Fund will be adjusted to increase signing bonus while decreasing the holiday expense budget. Benefits Administration Fund balance will be increased to offset the decreases in expenses for extra payroll help and benefits associated, for a total of $6,878. The 2015 LTGO refunding bond adjustment was required to account for a request by treasurer in the amount of $361.571 from contributions and offset by expenses of loan and interest expense. Law enforcement records fund balance will be reduced by $91,130 to provide funding for one position and the associated benefits, which was previously approved as a personnel action item. The IT department will undertake 2 projects to be funded by the IT Reserve Fund. One project for a new telephone system would be $700,000. And the other project to provide technology management and technology administrative services for a 10-month contract in the amount of $110,275. The IT Reserve Fund balance estimate in the budget will also be adjusted to actual ending fund balance at December 2022, resulting in an addition of $202,270. And after funding the 2 projects described here, the fund balance will be $893,502. That completes all the adjustments.
Okay, this isn't unlike private enterprise where we'd probably look at our budget on a quarterly basis and say, you make your best guess and then we do some adjustments. We do the same thing here. We just do it in an open setting.
Yes.
So did you have anything to add?
Just a recapping for the citizens if they were out in the audience, I would have probably tuned in to say, it sounds like my bottom line for the general fund, which is generally the semi-optional stuff. It's not really optional, but anyhow, that's 150,000, let's say.
146,000.
Right.
Yes.
But you're the accounting person and I'm okay. So if I take a look at 150K as a percentage of a $50 million general fund, I come out with a pretty small number, 0.04%, and I'm rounding numbers. So I think that actually is a number I would be focusing on out there. Okay, so you're growing the budget, and by how much? Oh, okay, I can see where that would be a margin of error easily enough. And then everything else must be falling into rearranging the buckets.
Correct. Correct.
And then the only thing I would ask is there anything implied by rearranging the other buckets? So it doesn't commit us to doing something that we haven't discussed before or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. I would open it to public comment.
You've got to use the hammer. I mean,
Oh,
sorry.
Seeing none? Close it? Yeah,
Let's check hands. I don't see any hands.
I don't see any hands. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. We need a motion to approve it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the budget amendment that has been presented.
Seeing no hands, no further people up, I call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it.
thank you.
We have a couple minutes before the next one is a closed public hearing because it's on a development. And as a reminder, people that can speak at this meeting, they have to have participated in planning commission meetings when they were going on. So that'll come up at 10, but we have a couple of minutes if anybody else has some comments. If not, we can take a small break. Okay. Let's take a small break till 10. Good with that? No.
I came to bring part of this huge slip. I was having a headlock.
Yeah. Do you have a doctor's note?
Yeah, Dr. Shea.
Okay. This closed public hearing is on a preliminary plat approval for Ridgeview, 11 lot rural subdivision. Basically 27, a little over 27 acres, out in Castle Rock. So I will let you take it.
Okay, well, good morning, Commissioners. So my name is Daniel Turner. I'm a community planner with the Building and Planning Department. And before you today, I do have a presentation regarding the Ridgeview subdivision. It's a rural subdivision proposed for, as you said, 11 lots. Applicant is going to be Stanridge Incorporated. TRMC Ventures LLC is the owner. Zoning comprehensive plan designation. Our property is unzoned and the comprehensive plan designation is rural. Cowlitz County Code 1850-130 describes the board procedures for considering a rural subdivision. The Board of County Commissioners may continue the meeting if more information is needed. The board shall inquire into the public use and interest of the public interest proposed to be served by the establishment of the subdivision and dedications. And the board shall conditionally approve or deny the rural subdivision based on RCW 5817-110 and the Cowlitz County Code 1850-130. So notice of the Planning Commission hearing was published in the Daily News on February 1st, 2023. Notices of public hearing were mailed to all property owners within 300 feet on or before January 30th of 2023. Notices of public hearing postings on or near the subject property and in the Castle Rock Post Office were posted on January 30th, 2023. The Planning Commission held a workshop on January 18th, and the open record public hearing was held on March 15th. I'm sorry, I believe that date for the Planning Commission meeting is wrong for the workshop. I believe it was the 17th of February. I'm sorry, 15th of February of 2023. And then the open record hearing was held March 15th of 2023. And then a call for hearing was made at the April 4th Board of County Commissioners regular meeting. So SEPA DNS, which is the determination of non-significance, was issued on November 17th, 2022. Additional comments were received during the agency review and included in Exhibit J. Those comments have been addressed in the staff report and the proposed conditions of approval. So SEPA compliance has been achieved. The subject property does consist of one tax lot totaling approximately 32.92 acres. The site is presently undeveloped and vacant. The property lies adjacent to Spirit Lake Highway and Sidetown Road. Sidetown Road runs through the property with 5.6 acres east of Sidetown Road and the remaining 27.32 acres lying west of Sidetown Road. The proposed subdivision for you today is for the 27.32 acres lying west of Sidetown Road. In March 2022, the county approved a Class 4 forest conversion to permit a timber harvest and conversion of the property from forest practices to residential use. A critical area permit was issued to permit harvest activities within a portion of Salmon Creek, the riparian habitat area. To mitigate the impacts of Salmon Creek, the applicant filed a restrictive covenant for those portions of Salmon Creek west of Sidetown Road, restricting development activities within the 50 feet to the north and 150 feet to the south of the creek. The property was harvested in late 2022 and early 2023. So this is the proposed 11 lot preliminary plat. Lots 1 through 10 will be accessed by a new private road. Lot 11 will be accessed by Spirit Lake Highway. Public water is available in Sidetown Road and Spirit Lake Highway. The applicant may be proposing to utilize lot 11 as a commercial lot. The Cowlitz County Land Use and Comprehensive Plan will permit any uses not declared a nuisance in this area, including residential. A water line will be extended along the new private road from the water main located in Sidetown Road. The proposed subdivision meets all rural subdivision standards. No waivers are being requested. Each lot will be a minimum of 2 acres and will have a building site sufficient for a dwelling and an on-site septic system. Prior to final plat approval, the applicant will grade and level the building sites and will construct the road and water line servicing lots 1 through 11. WashDOT currently has no objections to the lot 11 access to Spirit Lake Highway. Critical areas on site include Salmon Creek, a type F fish-bearing stream, a type N non-fish-bearing stream, and a small portion of a critical aquifer recharge area. A restrictive covenant that was placed on the property with the forest practices approved March 2022. The covenant restricts developments within areas 50 feet north and 150 feet south of the stream. In addition to the covenant, the riparian habitat area for Salmon Creek extends 100 feet from the ordinary high water mark on the south side of the creek. The north side has a variable width ranging from 100 feet to 50 feet due to the presence of existing impervious surfaces, which are most likely the remains from when 504 was realigned. A community well is located across Spirit Lake Highway north of the subject property. A small portion of the critical aquifer recharge area for that community well encroaches into lot 11, fronting on Spirit Lake Highway. All critical areas will be shown on the final plat with notated development restrictions for those areas. The applicant has shown that all critical areas will be avoided by future development.
Can I ask you a question on?
Yes.
I saw in the covenants give you 150 feet on the one side from that creek, and then this buffer, is that an additional 100 feet?
They kind of overlay on top of each other.
They okay.
Yes. So the 100 feet would still apply, but the restrictive covenant extends it basically 50 feet.
50 feet, yeah, okay.
All right, so after the approval of this preliminary plat, the applicant will submit construction drawings for all proposed roads and utility extensions and necessary stormwater facilities. No grading, excavation, construction shall be conducted until all construction plans have been approved and grading permits issued. All required water main improvements must be designed, reviewed, and installed prior to final plat approval. Soils tests shall be completed for each lot prior to final plat. A homeowners association shall be created and incorporated. The incorporated papers shall be filed with the Secretary of State, and a copy of such articles will be submitted to the Cowlitz County Department of Building and Planning prior to final subdivision approval. The Washington Uniform Common Interest Community Act requires this. The road maintenance agreement shall be required and will be notated on the final plat and reviewed prior to final plat submittal. All easements, restrictive covenants, critical areas, and building sites will be shown on the final plat. And once all construction is complete, and all required documents have been submitted, the final plat will be presented to the board for final approval. The rural subdivision code is somewhat less restrictive than the urban subdivision code. The applicant has not requested any waivers or variances. The proposed preliminary plat meets or is conditioned to meet the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The proposed preliminary plat meets or is conditioned to meet all the rural subdivision standards. All other considerations are in place to address applicable county ordinances governing the subdivision, SEPA review, water line extensions, and the construction of the private road. The staff has found that the proposed subdivision meets criteria for approval of a preliminary subdivision. The proposed subdivision is consistent with the goals and policies of the urban comprehensive plan designation. Of the rural comprehensive plan designation, the intent and language of the zoning code, the critical areas ordinance, and the rural subdivision ordinance. So staff is recommending approval based on the findings and conclusions and subject to the conditions attached and contained in the staff report. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval at the March 15th Planning Commission meeting. And that will conclude the staff presentation.
Couple questions for you. And it kind of goes around lot of 11 on Department of Ecology. It says proposed lot 11 is encumbered by critical areas and does not allow for the required mitigation sequencing. I'm not sure what all that means.
So the applicant had originally submitted a 12-lot subdivision. The 5 acres east of Sidetown Road is there's a lot of encumbrances on critical areas on that lot.
On that one, okay.
And so at the Planning Commission meeting, it was suggested by one of the commissioners, and then the applicant later requested that county staff look into that 5.6 acres. And we determined it was a separate lot of record and did not need to be included in this subdivision.
Okay.
So the lot 11 that the ecology is referencing is that 5.6 acres. That's no longer part of this.
Okay, we were talking about two different things.
Yeah.
When they were looking at that. And just for my information, when it says grading and filling must be only clean fill. What's clean fill? I mean, if I talk to noxious weed, they'll tell me clean fill is it has no stuff in it. So I'm just trying to get an eye.
I believe the term would mean the same thing. So clean fill, non-contaminated. I'm not sure they're going to be bringing in fill, mainly taking fill away. Because
Yeah, looking at the site, I'm not sure
Yeah.
what you'd be bringing in there. You got a whole mountain there. I've looked through this and I've looked at the property and it looks like the setbacks, you worry about the steepness some, I think, and it looks like the setbacks that have been assigned or seem reasonable to me to do all that. The entrance road is a little bit close to timberline. I don't know how that's all gonna work in there, but it seems pretty consistent with other lots that I can visually see up there. You have any questions or concerns on it?
Questions, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there's any particular order. Could you tell us what the nature of the of the negative commentaries that you received? What are people concerned about here? And was it just yeah, and if you could make a comment on that.
So I believe the comments received, we have not received any written comments, but the comments received at the Planning Commission.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you too well. Could you repeat?
Yes, yeah. So we have not received any written comments, and the comments received at the Planning Commission And I'm summarizing, I believe one of them pointed out the stream on the west side, which was shown on our critical areas map. And they were also mainly concerned about traffic. And then the intersection at Town Road and Spirit Lake Highway was a high concern as well. Spirit Lake Highway speed limit is 50, 55 in that area. And it's kind of common knowledge that the speed limit is often exceeded in that area. And then we also have, since that is the only connection to portions of northeast Cowlitz County, that's where all the truck traffic goes for logging. And during the summer months, that's also where all of our, well, a lot of traffic is generated by tourists going out to the mountain.
Have you been to that intersection onto?
I have. I went and sat there and watched it for a while, and there is, when you come out westbound, it kind of comes around a corner that they're coming around, and it's a little bit blind up there. But you know, I sit there for quite a while and watch traffic, and it's traffic, but it's not steady. I'm sure there are times that it is, but
But thing is,
I thought it was okay.
in something like that, the only concern is if you really have to be alert driver. You're at the stop sign on side road, and
If you're at the stop sign, yeah, I think you really need to pay attention to your right.
Yeah.
That somebody could be barreling around that.
and those logging trucks can't
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. That,
Okay, again, the HOA is required by law,
Yes.
and the maintaining of an HOA, that's all prescribed also, or is that something that's to the option of the builders?
That should be prescribed. Yeah. We will receive a copy of their
Okay, and
or a final plat.
and the water main is already there?
The water main is currently inside Town Road. The applicant will need to extend the water main from Town Road up the private road to serve the 10 lots that are up there.
And that's the obligation of the,
Yeah, that will be the obligation of the developer to install that, and the county will inspect it.
and I see Patrick's here. Is the intent in the future to take that private road and make it a public road? There is no such intent at the moment.
With it being a private road, it's privately owned. And if any private road throughout the county wants to become a public road, they have to bring it up to public standards before the county is able to accept it, so that the other taxpayers aren't bearing the burden of doing that.
Okay, will this private road be built to county standards?
To county private road standards, it will not be built to public
But
road.
Not for public road. And the big difference there is the width and also the composition.
Correct. It's about 4 feet too narrow and about 3 inches of asphalt too little.
yeah. I think it could only serve this development with the grade of the stuff. There would be it would be extremely difficult and expensive to put anything through to where it connected anywhere else.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And the school bus, is there going to be a school bus there?
Well, I'm sure they come up Town and pick up kids. I don't know exactly where the stops
Yeah.
are. But
Anyhow, that's looks pretty clean to me, so I don't have any other questions.
well, then
Oh, actually, I do. I just remember. What was the quorum like? You said it was a unanimous. Were there representatives from the area?
There
Board
were
representatives?
speakers and there were members of the public there, and they were from the area. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay. And I'll open this meeting. It's a closed public hearing, so the names I have of folks that have commented on this before and have the ability to speak today is David Mundale, Brian Zeman, or Jared Bishop? I'm not seeing any. I drove up there yesterday and looked this over, and I sit out before and watch the traffic. People are always going to have some issues with, they don't want folks there, but I think this is done right, and I don't have any troubles with it. So I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
Did you close the public hearing?
Nope, sorry, closed.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we approve the preliminary plat as has been presented.
See no other comments? Call for the vote in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Approved. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. We have any other public comments? We're certainly glad to take them before we close this. Okay.
I beat him.
Oh, it would be there, but
I beat you. I'm sorry. Have a seat. And I just had a question on, we had a great meeting on Friday for Rails to Trails. And I was wondering if you guys had thought about that, discussed that, what the next steps are.
Go ahead.
we had thought about it. In the works right now is a letter to Senator Wilson that basically states the county has no interest in the Rails to Trail. It's part of the Cowlitz, the Columbia Cowlitz Railroad, AKA Patriot Rail Abandonment. If nothing else, the letter that was originally sent had those clauses that we couldn't live by. If we take those clauses out, the notice of interest of interim, the NITU, interim trail use, will not be granted, and we have a limited amount of time left before. So any notion of being a placeholder doesn't make any sense. As far as this commission is concerned,
Thank you.
Good question.
I would guess that letter will be on the consent agenda next.
It would be on the consent agenda.
So you'll get a chance to see that. It just, I think we were of the same mind that we just can't encumber this county to that potential liability. It's the potential liability versus any benefit that I can see for the county just isn't there. So.
Yeah, and I would add, we just had testimony earlier from a lady talking to us about a pretty serious problem.
Yeah.
So we need to concentrate on those things.
Yes, sir. Come on.
Yes, sir. My name's Rick Satcher, and I've been a political prisoner for the Jim O'Higgins case. I also, this courthouse has tied my assets up for 7 years, $1.5 million. And my wife is terminal. She's got brain cancer. I've got 6 holes in my guts. I could hold it up right now. I have stitches in my intestines. I want to know how long that the courthouse can hold on to somebody's assets during a divorce. 7 years is a little bit long, isn't it, for the county attorney? And I'm 67 years old. What are they doing? Waiting for me to fucking die? Art knows about it. He's been served papers. Rick Dahl knows about it. Everybody knows about it.
I do.
Blondin is doing it with the city attorney. They're ordered to sell my property $1.5 million, which they say is not. I have a certified appraisal, says it is worth $1.5 million. They've been allowed to tie my assets up to for political reasons for 7 years in this courthouse. I want to know when it can be taken care of before I die, hopefully.
Yeah, I can help a little bit here,
Okay.
but not much. We have zero, capital zero control over the courts.
Well, it's being done with the Washington State Bar in this courthouse.
That may be.
You have control of that.
No, we don't.
Yes, somebody does.
Somebody does. It's going to be, you go talk to your presiding judge, which now would be.
Judge, on our last hearing, she came up and says, I like Mrs. Thatcher's paperwork. I don't like Mr. Thatcher's paperwork. Bam, slams the hammer, takes off out of the courtroom. They've shut the mics off 3 times, so I cannot present evidence. I've never been able to present evidence in my own case because they shut Skype off.
Yeah,
I guess that's not illegal in this county. This has got to end. This is a bunch of crap. They're stealing people's assets using this courthouse, and you people know about it. And it's all for political reasons.
Well, I can assure you neither Rick Dahl nor I have any political capital to gain or even lose in this matter.
Did not say you did. I would like the commissioners to look into it because it's being done in our courthouse with our legal system.
Well,
I just pulled the sheriff's report. I'll have a reply for it. The sheriff's report says they looked it up on the internet. My land's only worth 500,000. If you don't separate up the land, it isn't. It's to be separated up, court ordered, but they've refused to do it.
Yeah, I'm uneasy.
For 7 years.
Because I know we have no control over this. The only time I've ever spoken to a judge about something, they basically recused themselves from the case. So I can't even go to a judge and say, what's going on here?
You mean the city attorney, Judge Hahn, has recused herself from that case? I've got no notification and I am the attorney. So at what point they don't get in trouble for not notifying you, putting things in the case? I guess it just goes on and on and on. They just make up rules as they go along, don't they?
That's a possibility. Yeah, I've said before, I think we have a broken legal system, but that doesn't mean that I can go out and change things or that either of us can go do anything about that. We can follow the same paths as any citizen and file a lawsuit of some kind. I cannot involve
against the Washington State Bar. My cases are against the Washington State Bar president. So that goes a long ways, doesn't it, Art?
I don't know.
Until this courthouse does something down here, Washington State Bar ain't gonna do a damn thing about it because it's the president. And he controls the little puppets down here. And he controls the sheriff's office, which did a bogus investigation. They took me into custody in the Jim O'Hagan's case, had me there for 6 months. According to the paperwork, the sheriff in Cowlitz County, they did not have me for 6 months, only had me for 90 days. I could fully talk to everybody on the phone. Fact of the matter is, they had me for 6 months. I could not talk to anybody on the phone. Nobody was allowed to come in and see me, and I was kidnapped as a political prisoner.
Have you gotten into organizations like the ACLU?
They take my mail. I had an FDIC investigation where the comptrollers of the currency pulled up a phone conference with me and Bill Hillier, my attorney. Oh, and by the way, all these attorneys that have filed this paperwork on me were all my attorneys before. Bill Hillier was my farm attorney. Scott Blinks was my gravel pit attorney. The judge in the case, Judge Hall, against me was Bill Hillier's partner, the lawyer in that case, who was against me, using their own law partner as a judge.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't think I know what to do with any of this.
I don't either.
Yeah, I know. Nobody does. Because it's a corrupt legal system, a corrupt sheriff's department. And you people are in charge of it.
Anybody else?
So I just, today, I want to say, welcome to the communist state of Washington. And I'm basing this stuff on some of that right there. This goes on all over the place, but you know, the thing that came that really tipped it over the scale for me, they've passed this law now about kids where, you know, they can take your kid, hide them from you, and mutilate them. And if that's not communism, I don't know what is. And to me, I've come to this point now where I feel like I got to arm myself to protect myself from the government. And every time they take a little chip off the Second Amendment, we watch them do it all the time. The First Amendment dies off. We don't have a First Amendment anymore. We really don't. I can't say, I can't talk about certain subjects in certain ways everywhere I go. Now, we've kind of hammered out a little free speech spot here, and some of, you know, most all I got to say doesn't really affect, you know, it's not you guys, but it's the situation that we're in now. And, you know, it's like when you look at this and you just say, wow, you know, my country is gone now. And, you know, we've got a Supreme Court here now that's stacked up, you know, the majority is all appointees and they're all doing the bidding of the head of the government. The government now is controlling everything. And it's really an assault on the middle class. It's the people like the lady that spoke earlier, you know, her income is fixed. And yet, and she's a Longview person. Again, this isn't you guys exactly, but Longview, they just raised everybody's fees and taxes on all this stuff. And you go to their meeting and they sit there and they're like, well, it's just a latte a week or something like that. You know what I mean? Hey, we're not drinking lattes out here. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's like we're the instant coffee crowd, you might say. And this is a real problem. And this goes outside of your purview, and I've kind of called for this before. I'm not joking. You know, we got to kind of take a stand here. We got to say, you know, nobody in this county is going to take a kid away from their parents. You know, you could send your kid to school and never see them again. Now, it's not something, you know, it's just like, this is going to lead to the kind of thing where, you know, just imagine, and I mean, it's not hard to imagine this. This is the scenario they have set up. Is you take your kid to school, you come back in the afternoon and they're not giving your kid back. Now, what are you going to do? If it happened to me, I'd be like, I don't care anymore. I'm going to do something. My attitude, I believe, would be reflected through any parent that had that happen to them. And if we're not at the tipping point now of just outright, I don't want to say violence, but it's coming. And that's the kind of thing that's going to push people over the edge. And so I know we have like a gun resolution here, and how much power that has, I'm not sure, but we need to, it's not something you guys should have to do. This shouldn't have to take place. But at a point, you know, and we got to find a way from our leadership to stand up to this kind of crap, because it's like you say, it's just like Rick said, the legal system is completely out of hand. And how are we going to fix that? We can't. You'll never get these guys on the Supreme Court out of their jobs and what they're doing. And they can pass any crazy law they feel like now, because statewide, because it's just going to go to that Supreme Court and they're just going to say, okay. And I don't know how you guys can do this. I have a million suggestions, but it's, just a citizen, but we got to find some way to stand up to this stuff. And I know you guys are interested in it, and I hope we can do something like this, but right now we don't have America anymore. We really are a communist country. We are really run by the government. And the government is taking us more and more all the time. And now that now you can just see what they're going to do. And this is a short session. Imagine when the legislature gets together for a long session, how much stuff they're going to do. We got to start pushing back, and we got to push back really hard now. I don't know what you guys can do, but anything would be something.
I much appreciate what you said. The only thing I can say off the top of my head is to exhort people at the election time to elect the right people.
I mean, it gets closer.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. I just wanted to piggyback off of what Tim said. We have teachers that are indoctrinating our kids in school. A friend of mine had her child be told what is a boy, what is a girl by definition of haircuts and clothes they wear, and that it didn't matter what they were born with. And then you have schools in our county that are putting litter boxes in the bathrooms for children that identify as cats. That's in Kelso.
That's true.
This is true. I had a friend pull her child out of school because the school put a litter box in the bathroom for children who identify as cats. This is something where we need to stand together as a community. We need to have our county commissioners consider this as no more of this nonsense, no more of this. I am speaking as a mother. I am speaking as a grandmother. This has gone too far. There's two genders. There's male and female. We are not born as cats and we are not born as dogs. We need to, this SB 5599 is too much. And I think of these children that are being indoctrinated, and it's not just youth, it's young adults. And these are children and youth and young adults that need their parents. And we need to, as a community, as a county, we need to stand around them and we need to protect them. Their minds are not where their minds cannot make that decision. That is mutilation. And we cannot sit there and be like, yes, you are a cat. Here's a litter box. What's next? This has gone too far. These schools this is ridiculous. And for our governor to sit there and be like, yes, here, play into this. These children need to be in school where they're going to learn. They need to learn the alphabet. They need to learn cursive. They need to learn math. They need to learn history, real history. Not this junk that's being thrown at them. I fear the day that my grandson enters a school. I fear the day that any child walks into a school building. I tell you what, if my child were still in school. My 4 children were still in school, and they were taken from me because they said, the school told them, well, we'll take you to a place where you can have your gender reassigned. Don't mess with Mama Bear. We have got to stand up for these children. We have got to stand up for the parents. The government has no place in the schools, and they have no place taking a parental right away. The school was not meant for the government to step in, and they have put their toes in and they've just dived in full force. And we need to stand around them and protect these children.
Disagree.
No, we clearly we agree, and clearly I appreciate your using this time, hopefully to get a message to a wider audience. We have had elections for more funding for the schools. There's currently one going on for Woodland, and one in Kalama passed when it shouldn't have. And I think Castle Rock passed too, didn't it?
I believe so.
So it's, your neighbors are pretty much complicit with putting these handcuffs on you.
Most of them don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, there's many things I could talk about, and it's very frustrating that I'm probably not going to today. But I do want to say I went to a youth prevention summit for Cowlitz County put on by the ESD 112. So it felt very government managed, and the educational pieces, they had work sessions that dealt with different issues for 6th graders. And there were probably 200 and some kids there representing all the schools in Cowlitz County. And several of them were very important: mental health, how to manage mental health issues, and drugs and alcohol. One of the pieces that I was concerned about was when they were talking to the kids about issues that they're facing, they need to talk to a trusted adult, but never did the information state go to a parent. It was always a trusted adult, which concerned me. And when kids were conversing back and forth, I went to 6 different sessions of this all day long at this youth summit. And it was down at the First Baptist Church in Longview. It was very well organized, but they just never brought up the fact that it could be a parent that you would go to. And I felt like they needed to say that first and then follow it with, or a trusted adult, as we used to do when we did our education in the schools. But the kids would say, they'd raise their hand and say, well, I would go talk to my parent. But that never reflected in the adults' conversation that that was a good thing. And I was very impressed by that action that was being done throughout that summit that day, to leave the parent word out of the whole conversations about helping adults. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and comment to you guys. I'd like to touch on a couple of subjects that were talked about earlier this morning. On the public lands issue, that's real important to me, because I don't know how many of you people are aware of what happened with the Louisiana Purchase and the full faith and credit of the 13 colonies and the rest of the colonies that came into our union. The colonies, the states that were established before the Louisiana Purchase, they have almost no public lands. The only federal lands they hold are lands of forts, arsenals, and post offices and needful buildings. West of the Louisiana Purchase, we have tons of federal lands that were supposed to be by law under the Full Faith and Credit Act to be given to the people in the forms of homesteads. That was never done. It was never accomplished. We're all in violation of the Full Faith and Credit Act. with the public lands west of the Mississippi. Now, what bothers me most now is that I've witnessed and saw where some of these federal lands are being hawked to China for our national debt, and I'm in fear that there's going to be more and more of these federal lands put in as collateral for our national debt. We need to address the problems with the Full Faith and Credit Act and the public lands west of the Mississippi and who has control of them. Those lands were supposed to be given to the states, to be given to the people respectively. This has never been done and accomplished. On the children and the schools issues, it's very dear to me. I had children that went through schools. I have grandchildren in schools now. I recommend everybody to get and read The Optimistic Child by Dr. Martin E. Seligman. The difference between an optimistic child and a pessimistic child is how they're raised in the household. The optimistic child understands rules and understands discipline, where the pessimistic child never understands rules and never understands discipline. And the pessimistic child never becomes a responsible adult. And what we have now is we have teachers in our schools that were not raised by responsible adults. They're pessimistic children and they've never become a responsible adult. And we have tons of this going around. And Dr. Martin E. Seligman and a group of psychologists talked about this several years ago, back in the 60s and the 70s, and stressed on how bad it was going to be into the future. So I really urge you guys as commissioners to get this. It'll help you understand where some of these teachers are that are in the schools now. And it's a battle that you have to battle with. It was with the unions. The unions are very, very difficult to deal with on keeping some of those people in place where they absolutely shouldn't have been hired in the first place. And it's a sad situation. I feel for you guys greatly. My last issue is what's very dear to me, and it's election integrity issues. And we have a problem. I know Arn says to go to the precinct committee meetings and vote, but we have a problem with the vote. It's a problem. We're living in a dictatorship. We have to come to the reality of that we're actually in a dictatorship, and we're going to continue to live in this dictatorship. Our vote they're not going to count. They're very difficult. And the people that are in control of the dictatorship are going to maintain control of the dictatorship. We absolutely need to do something about it. We need to cease it and desist it. Currently, I have a very dear friend of mine that's a Washington State attorney. She's flexed her muscle to summon grand jury investigations, and she's been attacked by the Washington State Bar Association. Her bar license has been attacked, all for following the law and doing the right thing. See, the only people that have, the political power of the people, in order for it to be preserved, it has to, when there's an election crime that's been alleged, and there's laws that RCW 3680, 27, 84, 840, I don't want to have it back there. The prosecutor has a duty when there's election crimes that's been alleged to call the proper jury, and the proper jury is the grand jury. She's actually summoned grand juries. She's getting ready to try to summon grand juries in Callum County, Grace Harbor County, and Pacific County. And I would appreciate it if you would take the time to listen to her and to understand where she's coming from, very knowledgeable in the law, and make a resolution to support the law, to support a grand jury investigation into the election crimes that have been committed. And to say that you have no power over the judicial branch is wrong, because you have the funding, the power of funding and control, and the funding controls a lot of it. And you can, I would rather talk to you because I know there's probably Benedict Arnolds among us. I would rather talk to you guys in an executive session about this, and I'd love to meet, for you guys to meet Virginia Sjogren and talk to her about it. In a little more depth and details to avoid the Benedict Arnolds that are among us. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just a couple of comments on that. In this county, we have a very good auditor and election system. Don't interpret that to mean that there aren't people that commit fraud out there, but our group itself is really quite clean. And when you're suggesting that we should start influence other people, or we try to do that, but for the most part, before I can point my finger at King County, other county, I've got to have a clean house. So if you take a look at the situation in a major metro area in Cowlitz County, you see that we have all kinds of issues that we could resolve ourselves at the ballot box. So while I agree with you, I think we should start with our own house. And then in terms of the power of funding, on paper, you're correct of sorts. In practice, you're not. There are a bunch of rules mandated by the AG's office, say, that tell you what the proper ratio of judges to clerks to whatever else you want to do, or the defense attorneys to defendants. And we could start to strangle the budget. We have to choose, are we going to strangle the sheriff's budget? Are we going to strangle district court's budget, superior court? The moment we start to do that, you will find that our attorney will explain to us what has happened to other counties that have tried that. The judges will sue us, and it'll go before other judges. And you know, the result there is quite predictable. We would lose, and who would lose at this point would be the citizens of the county. We are not opposed to standing up for things that we can win an impact. I mean, even your ability here to speak is something that you won't find in many other places, but you'll find it here. And I could go on, but I'm just saying you're not painting a proper picture there on the funding.
And this is why I wanted to speak with you guys with Virginia in a executive type session situation, because I know there are huge hurdles, but I know that you cannot support lawlessness. And we know the law requires the prosecutors to call the proper jury when the election crimes have been committed. It's not a decision for the prosecutor to say, no, I don't want to call it. And I'm not placing blame on your particular auditor. I think that the election crimes are far greater than he or she is, and that they were used as tools in many places. And Virginia will absolutely agree with this, and that many of them were taken advantage of unwillingly and unknowingly. And she has a tremendous amount of data to support her arguments. I think that the Attorney General's office is the problem. They're leading the organized crime and corruption involved. And the investigation, it's very important, and this is what Virginia will stress. It's very important that you take the county prosecutor out of the equation and and put the pressure and appoint a special prosecutor such as Virginia to present these arguments to the grand jury, someone that's not under the thumb and the guidance of the Attorney General's office, because she believes without a doubt that the Attorney General's office is leading the organized crime and corruption involved in the election crimes. And she feels like she has the evidence to prove it. She's waiting for the opportunity, and she's pursuing it far greater than any other attorney I know in the state to try to do it. And like, I want to stress it. I'm not pointing fingers at your auditor. I'm not pointing fingers at the way it's, what happened is many of the auditors, and we've talked it over with many of the county auditors, they were taken advantage of, and it was a bad situation. Now, it needs to be investigated. If we don't have election integrity, people are gonna get discouraged from going and voting. It's already happening all across, and people are getting more discouraged. When we have lawlessness, where the members of the judicial branch refuse to follow the law, then we have the start of tyranny, and tyranny's happening. And essentially, when you're a public official and you're in a public official setting, such as the prosecutors are, and the Attorney General's office, and you refuse to follow the law, you're actually leveling war against the people, and you're engaging in a type of treason. So it's a bad deal. We need to protect our domestic tranquility. That should be our most important thing, is to protect our domestic tranquility. Without our domestic tranquility, we have pessimism that's spreading, that's creating a lot of the homeless. We have so much pessimism. Nobody has faith in government. And we need to restore the faith in government to restore the faith in domestic tranquility. When we restore the faith in domestic tranquility, we will see things change, and they will go in a different direction. So all we want to do is have the opportunity to protect the political power of the people, restore our domestic tranquility, and go in the right direction. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at your county auditor. I think that they were duped as much as many of the auditors were in the state. Some of them knew very well what they were getting engaged in. But many of them, most of them were absolutely duped. They had no knowledge that they were violating the law, and they didn't know what was going on at the time. And Virginia will agree with this. But the most important thing is to conduct a grand jury investigation, let it fall to where it needs to, so that we can identify the problems and fix them.
Anybody else?
Wow. I guess all in all, none of us here has ever, I don't believe anybody here has ever lived under a tyranny before. Most of us born and living in this country have grown up. Some of us are old enough that we learned through history. We learned about slavery too. It wasn't something that was hidden. And as time has been going on, I think we're gradually coming to an inflection point where we're going to see an uprising that none of us are going to enjoy. But I think that Tim's point is that the kids are going to be the key that are going to push this over. When the parents get frustrated enough that they've lost control of their kids, and the teachers and the schooling establishment feels that they're more important than the parents are, all hell's going to break loose one of these days if we don't get in front of this. I don't know how to get in front of it. I wish there was an easy answer. I've listened to a lot of input. I've listened to a lot of ideas. I don't see the wagon turning around. Everything seems to be going downhill the wrong direction. So I think when the tyranny side of this gets intolerable and the kids become the major issue, none of us is going to like what happens. And I'm just scares me to death to have to say it's going to be a bloodbath, but damn, that's the likelihood of that is getting to be more and more likely every day. There's too many of the young kids, and especially the generations now, the teachers are at a point where they never learned responsibility. Too many of them are of a socialist mindset and they don't know history. Now, all of a sudden they see these things that somebody can point a finger at the United States and say all these things that are wrong. Well, they never learned what the fight for freedom was. They never learned how many people have stood up to defend the very First and Second Amendment rights that we hold dear in this country. They don't know why they're even there. And they don't care about them enough to defend them. And it's not just the first two amendments. There's many more that they don't understand, they don't know, and they don't appreciate the value of them. I hope to God we find a way out of this soon. And I'm sure open to ideas. I'll get on the wagon to help turn the horses around and get it going back the direction it should be going. And I wish us all luck.
Just a couple things. In regard to the children, that's a slippery slope that's been going for a while. It started with schools taking little girls to get them aborted without parents knowing. And they didn't have to tell the parents. And I don't know if that's happened in Cowlitz County, but I know it has happened in this nation. We have, as others have said, we have teachers, we have some good teachers. But I saw a blurb the other day that said this math teacher, her curriculum was talking about genders. That has nothing to do with math. They need to know math. And as far as the elections go, I have read over the last couple, 3 weeks, there's been counties, just counties, popping up in different states that have refused to use machines, demanded that the county uses paper ballots and hand counted by the people that are supposed to count the ballots. They were done in time. They had the no errors in their counting. And I believe it was the county commissioners that could make that happen. I'm not sure. I'm just putting it out there. Thank you.
If I may, yeah, maybe I'm just too dang pedantic, but the problems with schools didn't begin with, say, abortion, as was mentioned. It began long ago in the fundamental concept that nowhere in the Constitution does it say that a government entity can take your child and force it to sit in a classroom for how many hours a day, for how many days out of the year. Because education is really obviously a good thing, we have allowed the laws to develop around mandates that are totally unconstitutional. This is for your own good and for your child's own, yeah, that. And we should not be surprised that, let me say it like this. If you go to a Catholic school, you should not be surprised that they're going to teach you about Catholic things. If you go to a Muslim school, you're going to be taught Muslim things. That shouldn't surprise you. What should you expect kids in the curriculum when you go to a public school? Oh, so we've allowed the indoctrination to happen, and it started slowly, just like everything else. And we have not stood our ground. I tell the story of going to a school board meeting, and I could have lounged almost any place. There was hardly any, there were no parents there, and I was just a grandparent. But to go to the football game, I had to stand in line and wait and wait, wait. And I finally could buy a ticket to go to see the football game. I had to pay them to let me see my grandson play. And we sit there and we tolerate that in a way that we assume it's normal. That's the new normal. And so even though there are lots of things we can do about complaining about the state government and federal government, I go back to, we've got to have our own house clean, and we do not have our own house clean. We've got plenty to do to fix it. The elections tell that to you. And if we are unable to get the right thing done in our own county, how can we aspire or even assume that we can change it in the world or the state? And in terms of refusing to use machines, we could mandate some things, again, that's fraught with some issues, but keep in mind that at this point in time, the big gorilla in the room is not the fellow that counts the ballots or so. It is the fact that our electorate puts into office people that we know shouldn't be there time and time again. And until we can come to grips with that, I think all these other arguments are great distractions, but they don't solve the problem. If I had one thing I would do as a magic wand here was to eliminate public schools. But the first thing I would do that I think is practicable is vouchers. Let the money follow the kids. Jim Walsh is very heavily pushing toward that. We didn't get into this mess overnight. We won't get out of it overnight. But I think the voucher and the money following the student is a start. Yes, I know there are issues I could argue about them, but that's sort of beside the point.
Yeah. Right.
It's clear that election integrity is very fragile. And we know that many of our elections will be changed by 5% of adjustment in one way or another. We also know that it is a chain of events. The county level can be completely clear, but if through the transmission of the information to our election counters and a little manipulation along the way, anywhere along the way, changes our feeling of election integrity. So until we have a closed loop system whereby our representatives in the county can look back on the data, and it's in every county, every area, and say, yes, that makes sense. That's what I submitted, and that's what came out of the system. And that capability is there if we want to follow through. That is a closed loop system that says, hey, what came and what the state presented or the country presented is really close, and it has to be more than within 5% of what I submitted for representing the citizens of my precinct or county or whatever.
Yeah.
Aren't, or members, that hindering or bribing voters is a crime. Yet we have rampant politicians bribing voters with promises of social benefits. These are crimes that are being committed. Our Attorney General is in it up to his ears, and they are supporting these crimes. A grand jury will end most of your problems with social benefits and get us back on the right track. Now, hindering voters, they supported the Chaz zone. People got killed in that situation. And it was all about hindering voters and this. And we're after this grand jury to expose these crimes. They're going around and they're forcing a political agenda on people and using, many cases, using public funds to do it. That's also criminal acts, serious criminal acts. This is why we need this grand jury, these grand jury investigations. We need to expose them. We cannot fix the problems without exposing them. We need to understand the problems and fix them. It's about following the laws and being lawless and going towards tyranny. That's all I had to say. I just wanted to respond.
Jimmy, quick question for you. I know I've inquired about grand juries in Washington State, and I don't recall the arguments in any detail. I just recall that it's virtually impossible to do one in Washington State. Do you know what the requirements are in Washington State?
Virginia has studied it in depth. She's actually, I think if you, and I don't have I probably have the RCW here, but I'd have to look it up. It's in chapter 10.
But just to save people time, so we do have a grand jury option in Washington.
You
State.
absolutely have a grand jury option to design. You actually have two options that you can pursue. The grand jury is far more difficult, but it is the proper one to do. Because if the grand jury led down indictments, then these public officials would have to forfeit their official bonds and we would be done with them. They wouldn't necessarily have to get prosecuted. Just the indictment would force them to submit their official bonds and we would be over with the problems. It would give them a wake-up call to understand that they could face criminal prosecution. But there's also an inquest jury operation, an inquest jury option here in Washington State, and any ministerial officer can call the inquest jury to investigate on any particular set of facts. Virginia is not necessarily supportive of the inquest jury option, but she would welcome it as a forerunner to justifying a grand jury investigation. But as Arndt commented on, the grand juries are seldom called. They're seldom called for one reason, is because they take all of the legal power out of the justice system and they give it to the people. As Justice Scalia said, the fourth branch of government is the grand jury, and it is the people. The people speak from the grand juries. And Justice Scalia was very supportive of the grand juries and grand jury investigations. So I would go over some of the obstacles to initiate a grand jury with you in Virginia. If we could, I would like to have her present, because I know how both her and I have ideas of how we can overcome some of those obstacles to reach it. I know it would be precedent setting. It's not out of question, because as we know, there's been a grand jury that's investigating President Trump right now. So you definitely have the precedents and the option to move forward in it, and it would be very powerful for the people, and the people would be all across the United, not only here in Callum County, all across Washington State and all across the United States would be extremely grateful and appreciative for it, I'm sure. Thank you.
I've got kind of something percolating around in my mind as I sit here. You know, we're kind of preaching to the choir. We all know how bad things are. But one little ray of hope, you know, you see some of us, I think probably most people in this room are involved in the efforts that we've got going door to door in Cowlitz County. And we have people going out every weekend. I think we have people going whenever they can. And the primary mission that we've got is to educate voters on what's really going on. And if you go stand on people's doorsteps and start explaining to them what's going on in their local government, I would say most of them can't believe what they're hearing. I kind of jokingly refer to our little newsletter as a combination of Common Sense by Thomas Paine and the National Enquirer, especially with the city of Longview. I mean, you never know what's coming up next and it's never good. So I want to offer a little ray of hope that people want to know what's going on. They're not going to come out. They're not going to go to meetings. They may not know where a good news source is, but when somebody lands on their front porch and is willing to take the time to explain to them what's going on and how they can help, we are getting probably, I would say, a 40 to 50% success rate when we talk to people and they say, we ask them, would you like to be more well-informed? And about that ratio is what we're getting. So there's a lot of people out there that want to know what's going on. They're not going to show up at meetings, but what we are counting on is when it comes time to vote, they're going to vote the right way and help us begin to make changes at all of the school boards and the city councils. And after all, we did have success here, didn't we, Rick?
Anything else? I don't see any hands. Oop.
I don't have a, I got here kind of late, so I don't have a complaint or a big speech. I just have a public notice. A land patent claim is being made in Cowlitz County, S14 T9 North R2 West, to challenge this claim by 6/19/2023. Do so here at americameetinggroup.com/Partridge. Thank you.
Anything? I don't see any hands. I'll promote our 1:30 meeting again because we will be going over results of RFP we put out. Could be interesting for people to hear. See no final comments. Any final from Art? You're good? Okay, we'll adjourn this thing. Thank you all for coming.